My name is Mac, and I help lead the St. Luke's Weight Loss Challenge for you all across the system. And today I am super excited because we have Erin Barker with us. You may recognize her if you're an employee here at St. Luke's. She's really involved in our champion network with Midday Move. She recently did a squat, hinge, and lunge webinar drop-in session for us a few months back for the Weight Loss Challenge group, which you can also find in the Carry Health Tips or on our YouTube channel playlist if you want to go back to that, because she is going to be building off of that content. So you may hear her refer to that. But today she's going to be talking about how you can really spice it up and move anywhere, whether you're at home or work. And she's going to highlight too how you can use some different equipment when you're working out, if you have access to that. And what's really exciting is we have some sliders here at the office that we are going to be giving away as your perseverance prize for the month of April. So watch your Carry Health Tips, because you have an opportunity to win some of those. And Erin's going to show you how to properly use those. So Erin, welcome, and thank you for all your support with the program. I'm going to let you take it away. And for all of you on the call, if you can just make sure you mute yourself while Erin presents. That way you can just type in questions in the chat box. And at the end, just as a heads up, Erin's going to be getting you up and moving. So get excited to move and have a lot of fun, because Erin's a spark of energy that I just know you will all enjoy. So take it away, Erin.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Mackenzie. I really appreciate being here and supporting the Weight Loss Challenge. It's so great to see some of your faces in person with the weigh-ins, and congratulations on even just taking this step in the right direction, right? We don't always get to lose all the pounds we want to as part of the challenge, but the point is that you are committed to a change, and that's super exciting. So I am going to share my screen. I've got just a couple of PowerPoint slides for you guys. Try to keep them interesting for you, but just mostly so that you have a reference tool to go back to in the event that I say something and you're like, what was that thing that she mentioned? So just want to be able to show you something so that you can grasp it later, and then we are going to move. So with that being said, let me share my screen. And as soon as I share, I only have one screen on today, so I won't be able to see you. So if you do have questions, feel free to type them in the chat box and we'll get to them at the end. And try not to judge me for the amount of windows I have open. It's a lot. Okay, so just as a disclaimer, the information should not be construed as medical advice. To always talk to your providers before beginning a program, and that this is for educational content only. So bands, weights, sliders, oh my, right? How to keep your workout interesting. Today, we're going to talk about just, before I get into equipment and, starting like, why would we use equipment and how do we do it? I think it's important to just create the foundations of movement and what goes into that and why we would want to take it to the next level in general. We're going to go over different kinds of equipment. I think it can be overwhelming, especially as you're starting a new program, to say, oh my gosh, what do I purchase for home? Or if I go to the gym, like, I don't know how to use any of this stuff. And I think it can be really overwhelming for people and deter them from creating that habit. And equipment is really just a tool to help you to take it to the next level. We're going to talk about some strategies for using equipment, and I'll give you some of my favorite equipment recommendations. And then we're going to move a little bit together, and then I'll open it up for questions. So foundations of movement. So we have all of these systems that work together that allow us to move effectively, right? We have tons of muscles in our bodies. In addition to muscles, you have the fascia, you have the tendon, which connects the muscle to bone. You guys can go down that a little bit further. But when we think about movement, a lot of times when I think people are starting an exercise program, we default to these foundational movement patterns, like I must do bicep curls, right? But when we think about, exercising a muscle or a muscle group, we don't ever do any motions really in isolation outside of playing a sport. And even then they're complex movements or a specific job task, right? So if your task in your job is maybe, let's take a line worker, for example, they're doing the same task over and over. They may want to have certain muscles be stronger or more flexible, or whatever the case may be, but most of us move in conjunction, right? So when we walk, when we sit, when we stand, like all of these things require a lot of different systems working together. And I think this is a great example of, even when we think about that isolated bicep curl, you're talking about the joints and the ligaments and all of these components that allow you to move functionally. And exercise is just training those movements, really. So movement patterns, these are the foundational movement patterns. This is a pretty simple website, and I'm actually going to show you guys when I stop sharing my screen, I'm going to bring up that page because I think if you've ever had questions about what these movements are, that's a really nice, simple way to start. So a pull is, think about pulling a door open, right? So you can pull, horizontally or vertically. Same thing with a push, right? We do these movements all the time. So when I think about an exercise to improve a skill, we want it to be relevant to something we do in our everyday life. How many of us pull up our purse off the ground, or our backpack to put on our shoulder? We're doing these things constantly, pushing doors open. Squatting, right? We sit in chairs, we sit on the toilet, we squat to pick things up. Literally, especially if you got kids at home, all the time. A hip hinge, when you bend over to pick something up, having good form and technique to be able to do that. So when I think about training some of our muscle systems to work together, these are the foundational movements that we want to be training in our exercises. So it's great to isolate muscles when you're doing sport or specific tasks, but really we want to think about, as we're incorporating exercise into movement, thinking about what the function of that skill or that motion should be. And that's where we want to train it. So we don't move in isolation. So let's not train in isolation. A lunge, which we use when we walk. When people think about lunges, and don't get me wrong, lunges are brutal. We're going to do some today just for fun. But we use them all the time. Bending, twisting, rotating, right? How many times are you reaching, especially, to help your kids get things in the back seat? Training those little intrinsic muscles is so important to allow our function. And then gait combines multiple of these movements together, right? So we're using a lunge, we're using a rotation, and then we're pulling those hamstrings to get our heel up. Okay, so let's talk about some different types of equipment. Most of us have seen the cardio equipment. We're familiar with what it looks like, what it is. You're talking the treadmills, the Stairmasters, the rowers, ellipticals. Running is, anything that's going to help you get your heart rate up. These are the types of equipment. And I think most people are familiar with those, but just thought I'd clear it up just in case. We have the free weights, right? So these can come in all different forms and sizes. So you have barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells. These are going to be things that have numbers on them, right? And this is very, very remedial, and most of you are familiar with this. But a lot of times people don't know where to start when they're going to things. And so we're going to get into that in the next phase. So I want to be using words that you're familiar with, and that's just why I'm introducing it here. One of my favorite pieces of equipment is our exercise bands. So, bands that have resistance, they're flexible, they're almost like a giant rubber band that you would use, which we're going to get into on the next slide, but that's just what they look like. They come in all different colors and shapes and styles. So they can be super long, they can be thick and made of cloth with rubber, they can be isolated, just kind of a latexy rubber material. Some of them are literally like a thick rubber band that you would put on a stack of papers, or they even have some that look like cables where you can attach them to certain types of machines or equipment to expand your motion that way. Cable machines. So I think a lot of times when people go into a gym, they see this setup and they're like, oh my God, I don't even know where to start. And this is actually a combination of free weights and the cable machines, or the Smiths machines, are going to be in the back. But again, the cable machines, what they allow us to do is, when you are starting out on an exercise program, and you're learning these motions for the same time, having good form is super, super important, right? Because you're asking your body to do something that maybe your body hasn't done in a while, or maybe ever in this way. And so your free motion machines or your cable machines, they put your body in the correct position, and they have cues kind of built in so that you can start to train these motions safer, right? So when you get into, let's say, a lat pull down, right? If you're using a machine, the bar is attached to things. So you can't have bad form or move your hands all crazy, right? Because the machine only allows it to work in the plane that it's allowing to. So if you are new and you have access to that type of equipment, I would recommend starting with the machines that are kind of pre-built. And it's awesome because they have pictures there that show you how to do it. They have explanations, and you can always ask anybody at a center to show you how to do it. And you can adjust the weights super simply. So if you're like, I don't want to be one of those people that's dropping weights or doesn't know how to do this, it's really easy to make those adjustments on those machines. And that's usually a good place to start. And then as you get more comfortable and you're working on more of the micro muscles within those motions, then you can do those same exercises on a free weights machine. And so if anybody has questions like that, please feel free to ask me in the Q&A session and we can break that down a little bit further. My favorite types of equipment are things that you would find in a rehab center. So your Bosu ball, which is this blue guy that has a physio ball on one side and a hard surface on the other. And the anything that allows you to work those tiny intrinsic muscles of your shoulder, of your hip, of your core. I am always like a huge fan of them. And the reason being is because those are the muscles that we need to have in really good control in order to do the movements that we do every day. So the reason why people a lot of times have pain or instability, or they come to the doctor because of X, Y, and Z from an orthopedic standpoint, is because these small muscles aren't working the way they're supposed to let the big muscles do what they're designed to do, right? So machines and equipment that allow you to work those small muscles, working on that balance, working on that proprioception, right? Those little tiny systems in our body that allow our tendons and joints and muscles to work better together. I am a huge fan. Medicine balls, right? So you have to think a little bit more intentionally when you use this type of equipment because it's not built the way that it's not a machine that's going to stop you from doing it, but allows you to be creative. Things like jump ropes. And here's where we could talk about the sliders. And, sliders are super, super fun. They're a great little tool that you can have at home. They're pretty inexpensive, and the Perseverance prize this month is sliders. So if you're paying attention, you can swoop some of those up. But you can even use things like dish rags, right? And what it allows you to do is create that unstable surface, right? So if you are, let's say, doing a lunge and you have a slider behind you, now you can start to work those muscles a little longer or a little differently. And we're going to talk about why that's important in the next slide. Okay, so if I had to pick my favorite equipment, if you're like, I'm thinking about building my home gym, or I really want something to take with me on the go. In fact, I have a set of resistance bands in my backpack. Actually, right now they're in my car because I needed to bring a lot of stuff with me into work today for the weigh-ins. But I always have a set with me because it's a really easy way to take something to add a little bit of movement and to spice it up on the go. And so if you're like, I'm looking for something that's inexpensive, that I can take anywhere. I can pack it on vacation. I can bring it with me to the office. I have a set in my desk. Resistance bands are such a great way to add a little extra to your workout, to your movement, to your exercise at a very low cost and a really easy piece of equipment to use. If you're thinking about more on that home gym side, or, you're like, I've been doing this for a while and the commitment things, again, I already told you I love, any sort of ball, Bosu ball, physio ball, med ball, the little spiky balls. I actually don't even remember the name of them anymore because we just call them spiky balls that you can see in that photo there. But anything that allows you to create an unstable surface, whether it's, you're doing a push-up on an unstable surface or you're doing a squat on an unstable surface, because now you're starting to train those muscles more effectively for the movement patterns that we do every day, right? So I think that's just a value there. And then, if you are looking to expand a little bit further, having something that can create more resistance in your workout, like a set of weights or kettlebells or something like that. And typically, weights are a little bit more challenging for me to recommend, just because depending on where you're at in your training process and what you're training for, or how you need to progressively overload, you may need a wider set of weights in order to accomplish your goals. And so that's where I think if you're starting to get into that transition of, I'm in this progressive overload, which I'm going to go into a little bit more in detail on the next slide. That's where you may want to consider joining a gym or having a space to do that, so that if that is your goal, that you have all the equipment that you could possibly need in order to accomplish it. So why would we do this? The first piece is progress, right? So I think many of us who have started a program, let's say in the past, and you're like, oh, I'm just not seeing results. It's because there's an overload principle that exists in fitness that says that you need to continually make changes in time, velocity, or speed, or resistance in order to overload those tissues to see a change. Gosh, that's frustrating, isn't it? Because you're like, I'm finally exercising every day, but I'm just not seeing the changes I want to see. I'm just not building enough muscle, or I'm staying the same. You kind of hit the plateau. And it's really because your body is so efficient. Our bodies were made to move, you guys, and they really and truly made to move in the sense that they adapt. So if you are stressing them, which is a good stress during exercise, your body's going to get good at doing that exercise. So if you don't change the way you're doing it, or the time you're doing it for, or the speed at which you're doing it, or how heavy you're doing it, your body's going to be good at that. And then you will no longer see those changes. You won't necessarily digress and go backwards, but you won't continue to see gains, which is why people use that terrible word, gains, all the time to see those changes. And so that's why. It's because it's a real life law that exists that says you got to have stress in order to see change. And it's because your body makes changes. It adapts. The second piece is to maintain or improve your form. So the great thing I think about equipment is that it really makes you focus on the movement. So even when I think about doing a squat, so if you guys did watch that squat video, or if you didn't, I'm going to go ahead and stand up real quick. When we do a squat and you have your form, a lot of people will get into the habit of letting their knees drop in on that squat, right? But if you have a resistance band on the outside of your knees and you're dropping into that squat, now you're almost forcing yourself to maintain that proper form, because if you don't, your band's going to fall down. And so that's just one example. Cable machines are another great example of this. And a lot of times, if you think about let's say lifting a heavy weight, right? You're picking up something super heavy, like you're doing a row. Sometimes if you go too light, you can cheat and get really sloppy. But if it's heavy, you have to use the muscles like they were designed to in order to do the motion, to do the mechanic. And it's because your body is smart. Over time, our bodies have developed and changed and adapted to say, hey, if you want to pick up that thing and row it up, like I think about starting a lawnmower, right? If you've got an old school lawnmower and you got to work that thing to get that thing pulling, you're in good form and you're squeezing that elbow tight, right? You can't do it sloppy because physically you don't have the strength in those tiny muscles to cheat. And the last piece, I don't know about you guys, but exercise seems to be one of the hardest components for folks. I think it's the one that gets people the most interested in being healthy, right? Oh, I'm going to start an exercise program. But I think it's one of the hardest things to commit to. And the reason is because it gets monotonous, right? How do you keep it interesting? Learning a new piece of equipment, getting something a little heavier. I think it allows you to have that variety in your workout so that you can continue to incorporate exercise. And even though a push-up is a push-up is a push-up on a medicine ball, a push-up with a resistance band, a push-up where you're climbing up on a stair step, a push-up on the wall, a push-up, there's so many ways that you can do a push-up, and a push-up's a push-up. But I think it just allows your brain to continue to adapt while doing that motion. So I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to pull up in my other screen, just because I promised you guys I would show you that reference. This is included in the reference slide. So if you do want to see an example of what those exercises look like, we're going to do some here in a moment. But this is a great slide that just gives you kind of a quick peek at it. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We've got about 10 minutes, which means that we can move for about 5 to 8. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's stand up and move together. I'm going to pull open my timer because I live and die by the timer. So this is what we call in as many reps as possible. And I'm going to do a 8-minute timer. Real quick. So I like to do either every minute on the minute or as many reps as possible in that time. So we're going to start with some nice simple marching in 3, 2, 1, let's go. So we're already incorporating that gait, right? So our gait is moving nice and easy, just starting to get the knees up, the hips up, wherever you're at today, keep moving. I want to be able to see what you guys are doing, make sure you guys can see me. We're just creating the blood flow, right? So a lot of times I think when people start exercise, they're like, oh, I need to have 30 minutes, or I need to have an hour, or I need to commit to all these things. You can move anywhere. We are on a webinar right now, and we are moving. right? So, or maybe I'm moving and you guys are watching me move, but I hope you're moving with me. So about 20 more seconds here, right? We're just getting our chest up. We're just getting some blood flow in. Maybe you're rocking out. Maybe you're running in place, but I don't know. I can't see you. I can't know if you're breathing hard. So you do you, and we'll do it together. In just a minute, we're going to drop down into our squat, right? In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're just going to start to drop low, keeping the chest up. And I want you to challenge you to focus on that movement. So sending those knees to the outside of that room. So if you missed that presentation a while back, go ahead, you can review it if you want somebody to break down your squat mechanic. Nice and easy, we're just getting some blood flow, right? So here's a great place where if you want to get a little progressive overload or use a little equipment, stand on a BOSU ball, get your resistance band around your knee, hold something heavy. You can hold a water bottle if you need to. We're going right into our lunge, okay? So getting a nice little split stand, they call it a split stand squats or a lunge. And again, you're just dropping straight over that back knee. A lot of times, people have the tendency to want to shift forward. That's putting a lot of pressure in that front knee. So I want to challenge you to think about yourself like a nice carousel horse. You're keeping the chest up, dropping the knee. We're going to switch sides in 3, 2, 1. Turn around where you're at. Again, if you have balance issues, you can hold on to something. Here, again, you can modify by holding something heavy. You can have that resistance band. That always makes lunges a way more fun. Got 10 more seconds here. And then we're going to go into our hip hinge. So just a little deadlift for 3, 2, 1. We bring those feet about hip width apart. You're coming, locking in that spine neutral. So imagine that stick is behind you, coming straight over and back up, squeeze those glutes. So you come forward and you squeeze the glutes. So I want you to think about squeezing the glutes. You show us that belt buckle, okay? So I know you guys are maybe in Idaho, like the belt buckles here. Show it off. Keeping that core locked. Perfect. We're going to go into some push-ups. So whether you're using a desk, a table, the wall behind you, keeping your elbows tight to your body, just push up. Nice and simple. Okay? So again, remember we talked about these can be vertical, they can be horizontal. You can come down and you can do them on your desk. That's a table, not as strong. Got it. Keeping the chest up. And you can think about how you want to do your push-up, right? So you can keep your elbows in tight, which is going to focus on more your tricep. If you bring your elbows out wide, it's going to be more your chest. For 2, 1. Staying in that bent over posture, just like we're going to row. Okay? So again, you can add a weight here. You can add a band around your hands. So this is that pull motion. We're pulling that posterior side, working those shoulders, keeping those shoulders down and away, squeezing them together in the back. Perfect. And then we're going right back into our squat. In 3, 2, 1, drop it down. Beautiful. We've already talked about how to modify this. If you want to take it up to a jump squat, right? Now we're getting more intense. We're picking up the pace. Find ways that you can modify very simply to keep it interesting. Chest is up. Guys are looking so good today, so strong. For 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This time we're going to lunge, but we're going to move, okay? So whether you're going to come forward or backward, the point here is that I really want you to focus on the movement, right? So you're going to keep those hips square, drop that weight over your back leg. Super important. Keep going. Awesome work. You got 5, 3, 2. Last one, getting into that hip hinge. Awesome. You may even notice that your hamstrings are moving a little bit better. I want you to stop at your point of resistance. So if today that's at 45 degrees, great. The point is that you have really good form, right? And you guys squeeze those glutes. Squeeze them. Our posterior chain, so important. This movement allows us to work all 3 muscles of the glute. And the glute is a powerhouse, you guys. Game changer. If we can work the glutes, we're doing okay. We've got our push-ups. Here we go. Again, squeezing. If you want to modify, you can take a step forward towards your wall and do a split stance, okay? That makes that push-up a little bit easier. You can get a little lower. You can add some weight to your back, right? So anything that's going to progressively overload you there is perfect. Finding little simple ways to modify, super important. Our last one is our row, but this time we're going to do it as a standing. So we're going to pull down, okay? So pulling like you're focusing on your lats. And it's a little bit of a mental game. You got to imagine that you're pulling down that heavy bar, or you're pulling yourself up onto that fence, right? Looking over your neighbor's fence. Maybe you don't want to look over your neighbor's fence. My neighbors have a really cute golden retriever puppy, and I'm always like, ooh, just sneak over and see that puppy. Keep going. 3, 2, 1. Nice job. Keep it really simple. So when I find that people struggle with incorporating exercise, into their day, into their work, it's all about just finding those little things that you can do to increase your activity. With our slider boards, you take a simple lunge and you just slide that foot out, right? So you're creating that uneven, unstable surface, and now you're incorporating movements that we do all the time. All right, so with that being said, we have about 4 minutes or so. What kind of questions can I help answer to anybody that's got them? And we'll talk about it.
That was so great, Erin. Love it all. And I did include the link to the squat, hinge, and lunge drop-in session Erin did in the chat box. So you can find that link there. But would love to see some questions coming through. It looks like Laura thought it was awesome. Heidi says, I had a heater on in my office. Don't need that anymore. Right? Isn't that great how we can just warm ourselves up so quickly? That's awesome. Is there
Heidi, I think that every week, every time I do the midday move, I sit there with my heater, my sweatshirt, and then pretty soon I'm like, who turned on the heat? Turn it off.
Agreed.
And that, and we only moved for 6 minutes. It's everybody. I think one of the things I learned, and this is relatively new in the exercise community, is that every minute matters. So parking a little bit far at the grocery store and taking that extra couple of steps in, that matters, that counts. Parking on the top floor of the parking garage and going up and down that stair, that matters. So you don't have to get these huge chunks of exercise in for it to count towards your movement. You can move anytime, anywhere, and that minute counts, which is really cool. I think that's a great rule. I'm glad that changed.
Yeah, me too. One question I have, Erin, while maybe some folks are thinking of one to write in the chat box, is what's the next progression? We talk about the squat, hinge, and lunge so much to our employees, and now, with weight loss challenge participants as those foundational movements. What is the next step from there?
Yeah, so I say the first step is work on your proper mechanic. The second piece is then to work on your flexibility so that you can make that mechanic better and work through the full range of motion. So if you notice that, in a hinge, if your best hinge goes from here to here, you're not really working that posterior chain. Whereas if you can get the flexibility in your hamstring so that you can work through the full range of motion, now you're going to allow that progressive overload to work through that whole length of the muscle. And then what you're going to do is think about changing some of those progressive overload components. So are you going to work out for more time? Are you going to lift something heavier, right? Add weight to it. So you can do squats over and over and over, but what if you did squats and held a 5-pound water bottle, right? Start there, start small, and then take it up to a 10-pound. For all the moms out there, my kiddo's like 30 pounds, and I was trying to do shoulder presses with him the other day, and I was like, gosh, when did you get so heavy, babe? I can't do this one-handed anymore. Not that I would one-hand lift my baby, but you guys get the idea, right? So then you can do weight, and then you start to incorporate some of those more functional movements, Mac, where you can start to incorporate, can we do a jump squat and do landing? Can we do things where we're moving with stuff? What if you have hip and knee issues? Oh gosh, that's a great question. I get that so often for folks. The glutes are everything. A lot of times when people start exercises, they're like, I will do knee extension machines and I will do all these things that just crush the knees. And it's so hard. And the reason why people a lot of times have knee pain, and I'll just demonstrate it, is because when we walk and our glute is weak and we go heel to toe, you get into a single leg stance. So my challenge for everybody today is do a single leg squat. Do it the best you can, okay? And if you find that if your hip drops, your knee drops, or maybe you have this Trendelenburg gait, this kind of hip shifting, what that tells me is that your glute is not strong. And when your glute is not strong, now when you get into that single leg squat, you're putting all that pressure on the inside of your knee and subsequently the outside of your ankle and all the way up and down that chain. So your back gets tight, your hip flexors are tight, your hamstrings are weak, your glutes are weak. The hip is everything. And a lot of times, so with hip pain, especially if it's on the outside of the hip, like a trochanteric pain or bursitis, that people will describe it as, it's because your glutes are weak. If you have knee pain, I would argue that it's your hip that might be causing some of your problem. At least in my experience, I've worked ortho for a few years. And so hip is everything. And my PT friends would say the same thing. They're always like, it's the glutes. And I'm like, it's the glutes. So that's your moneymaker. Hit those glutes.
That's a great question. We are at 12:32. I have one question. You mentioned the first step is to focus on our mechanics. What does mechanics necessarily mean for those of us who don't understand that term?
Yeah, thanks, Mac. You're right. In my world, I say things and I'm like, everybody knows this. So I really appreciate you asking that because maybe that's not the case. So it's really that form and technique. So working on specifically in the squat is going to be keeping your pelvis in neutral, having not a sway in your low back, keeping your knees pointed outward as you're dropping, driving the weight to the outside of your heels, keeping your weight in the back of your heels so your toes can almost lift up off the ground. And you guys can refer back to that video for these broken down a little bit more specifically. In the hip hinge, it's going to be that core trunk stability, right? So we're working on not only flexibility there, but also in the stability of the center. To be able to do that motion. And then in our lunge, there's a lot of balance components tied into that as well. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you for clarifying, Erin. That's super helpful. For everyone, I will post this recording on our YouTube channel, and we'll send that link in your Tuesday health tip via Carium, and be watching out for the Perseverance prize question because you guys will have a heads up since you watched this webinar. And it sounds like Erin's going to send me the PowerPoint slide deck, so I will include that with the webinar link in the Carium tip, so you can check out the videos that she mentions to get those proper mechanics set and solid. So thank you all for coming today. You were awesome, Erin, and we'll look forward to seeing you all at the drop-in session next Wednesday with Lisa and I. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.